What's going on, YouTube? I am back. I've been wanting to do this video forever. Oh my gosh. It's so hard to make a top 10 books that you've read. Because every time I start making this list, I start making the list of top 10 books of all time. And it's like, no, scratch that. That's not what this video is supposed to be. I'm gonna try to give you my concrete top 10 books that I've read this year, which is rough because there's nearly 80 books that I have to siphon through to make that. Who makes the cut and who doesn't kind of a thing. To be honest, I've come up with this list 4 or 5 times and every time I scrap it and start over because then I go back to my Goodreads and I see, oh, that book. I still haven't really come up with this list. So I thought I'd bring you along as I brainstorm and see what I can come up with and get the verified list because I know it's in there. I know it's in my brain somewhere. I need your help bringing it out. So I think we can kind of make this more of a vlog top 10 instead of a sit down top 10. And I think that would be more entertaining. And that's also more fun to, it's more fun to edit. All right, folks, I think number 10, thinking about it, it's gotta be a Joe Abercrombie book. And I've read nearly six of his books this year. And I think the one that stands out the most is Red Country. So I think I'm gonna put Red Country at number 10. I loved Joe Abercrombie's take on a Western. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was awesome. It's so Joe because it was hilarious. It was grim. It was dark. The story was so good. The plot was amazing. And of course, his character work is unparalleled always. I think what he does with characters is so unique. I've still yet to find an author that comes close to how he can make people come alive. Of course, Red Country answered a question that I had from that first Law trilogy, and it did it in such a beautiful way. Now, I know it's a little controversial. I know not everybody liked the way he did it, but I think Red Country is so good. It was the only 5-star read of the standalones that I read of his. I loved that book so much. And so I think Red Country deserves a spot on this list because it's still one of those books, though I read it back in like August, I think it's still one of those books that I think about to this day. I still think about certain events and certain people in that book. They're almost like friends, really weird, dark, twisted, grim friends, but they're friends. And I love how that story wrapped up. So I think Red Country deserves a spot on this list. Ouch. I hit my head. All right, is this a better place to do it? Hey, that's a way better place to do it. Oh man, I need gas. When don't I ever? Okay, number 9. Number nine. I would say The Housemaid by Frieda McFadden. So The Housemaid by Frieda McFadden was like the first introduction for me to adult thriller, and I loved it. Ashlynn had me read it for our first book swap on this channel, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, go and freaking watch that video. It's awesome. The Housemaid was something I wasn't expecting to like, and I liked it so much. It's like the first 5-star read that Ashlynn has given me. She's given me a lot of really good recommendations over the course of the year. I think The Housemaid tops the bill because of just how different it was and how intense it got. And I loved the plot twists. The plot twists. Frieda McFadden is like a genius when it comes to plot twists. She definitely pulled the wool over my eyes. When she did the dual POV, but they're both from the same voice, kind of like they're both from first person perspective. She had me guessing so many things, and she proved me wrong at every turn. And I loved it so much. Oh my gosh, like what to even say? If you're looking for a thriller that's going to scare you, but also going to leave you guessing, and that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat pretty much the entire time, The Housemaid by Frieda McFadden. It's so good. I think it's a solid contender for number 9 on this list. Okay, number 8 would have to be Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. That is the 3rd book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I love the Game of Thrones books. I love them so much. And that first one holds such a special place for me as a reader. But the second one is so good, and the third one tops the freaking charts. The stakes. I just don't know how George constantly has a talent for always raising the stakes. He always, like, there's always something worse that could happen, and usually the worst case scenario that could happen happens. He's a genius. He's an utter genius with it. You want the best dialogue you'll ever read? I think George R.R. Martin. You want some of the best plot, some of the most grand storytelling ever? George. If you want, oh my gosh, dude, the twists and the turns in this book, the plot twists. The thing about George R.R. Martin is you don't see his plot twists coming. You don't. You just don't. Storm of Swords is probably like the pinnacle peak George of, he was untouchable. His storytelling is untouchable, and the plot is driven so freaking fast, even though it's like a 1,000-page book, it's still so magnificent. I probably think about George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series at least once a day. It's one of my Roman empires. Okay. I think about A Storm of Swords often because of how that book ended. A Storm of Swords has to be at number 8 because of how grand and epic and majestic it was, and how infuriating it got, and how the characters were. It's just everything about it's perfect. I cannot give enough praise for this series. What are we at? 7? Number 7. Oh my gosh. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch has to be number 7. That was an absolutely perfect thriller. It was everything that I wanted and more. I loved the science fiction-ish kind of twist to it. The plot twist I did not see coming. Actually, not just the plot twist, like the entire book was a freaking plot twist. There's so many directions that Blake Crouch took it that I didn't think it would go. I had my own idea and my hypothesis on where it was going to take me and where it was going to land, and Blake Crouch completely took the rug out from underneath my feet. To this day, I think about that major plot twist, and I still think about how absolutely beautiful that ending is, or was. I love that book, and Blake Crouch will be an author that I definitely dig into more in the future. I think he's brilliant, and I think what he's doing in the thriller genre is just unparalleled at the moment. That is number 7 for sure. Number 6. I'm thinking number 6, it's gotta be It from Stephen King. Honestly, this whole top 10 could just be Stephen King. I think about his books the most. They have entertained me the most. They have compelled me the most. I think they have also influenced me the most in the creative process in writing. But I've not read an author quite like Stephen King before, and so It totally takes the number 6 spot. And it was one of the funnest reading experiences I've ever had. I still think about those characters. Bill Denbrough, freaking Ben Hanscom, Beverly Marsh. I love all of those iconic It characters. I love the setting of small town Derry, Maine, and I love the looming threat of this evil, menacing, sinister presence that takes the form of a creepy clown that haunts these children. But not only these children, it haunts this entire town, and it feeds off of children. It was like the perfect quintessential summer read for me. Stephen King has the ability to write a book that is over 1,000 pages and yet still make you cling to every single word. There's no fluff. I don't know how the man can write such a big book without fluff. There's no fluff, and I will reread it in the future. I may reread it for next summer. And so It by Stephen King takes number 6. Gosh, Stephen King really could fill up this entire top 10. I'm on a roof. Nothing new there. I'm always getting on roofs at work. I am using this parapet wall to block the freaking wind because it is a typical windy day in Utah, which means the wind is going at 30, 40 miles an hour, and it's unbearable. Number 5. Number freaking 5 has to be Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I think Lonesome Dove is an absolute masterpiece. Beautiful historical fiction. It's often considered a Western, which I can see why. It's about two Texas Rangers, retired Texas Rangers, that all they want to do is really have a farm, and they get caught up in pretty much starting a ranch and starting a cattle drive from southern Texas by the border of Mexico to Montana, where they eventually end their days. It's one of the most beautiful stories, a fantastic journey, a beautiful love story. There are some very heartfelt moments, tragic moments that had me crying, especially near the end, because the ending is so bittersweet, sad, that I couldn't help but bring tears to my eyes. But Larry McMurtry's prose and storytelling is so unique. Lonesome Dove deserves all the universal praise that it gets, because it's a flawless masterpiece. The action is worth it. The drama is worth it. The dialogue is perfect. The characters are flawed, yet they're so endearing. The story is brilliantly crafted and woven throughout this book. I love it. It's a thick one. It's close to 700 pages, but it's worth every single word. I still think back on my experience with that book and go, man, I want to reread it. Number 5, Lonesome Dove. Is it okay? Does it look good? If you're curious where I'm at, I am doing a survey for a Cinnabon, so it's kind of in the works. I'm in a mall. Isn't that spiffy? Number 4. Number 4, folks, would probably have to be, you know what? I can't pick. I was gonna say The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell, but having finished that entire trilogy, in fact, I finished the 3rd book today while I was at work, and I can't pick. I cannot pick between those 3 books. Okay, I lied. I can. I think the book that riveted me the most was Enemy of God, which is the 2nd book in that trilogy. Bernard Cornwell has such an ability and a talent to turn a phrase. It's the most beautiful prose I've ever read in my life. The Warlord Chronicles, or The Enemy of God, is about King Arthur. It's an Arthurian legend, and it's Bernard Cornwell's take on, if Arthur existed, what would an accurate historical representation of his life and his achievements, what would they look like? And it's beautiful. It's the most expertly achieved thing I've ever read. It's the most expertly done. Bernard Cornwell is a powerhouse, and I see all the authors that I love, like Joe Abercrombie and George R.R. Martin and John Gwynne. I see where they took inspiration from Cornwell's writing, particularly the Warlord Chronicles. It reads like it's fantasy, but it's historical fiction, and it's beautiful. It has one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever read. It has some of the best political maneuvering I've ever seen. Some of the best dialogue, some of the most memorable characters ever written, I think, are in these books. And I love everything about these. There's nothing in Enemy of God in particularly that I look at and go, could have been done differently, none of these books I look at and go, oh, could have been done differently. But I think Enemy of God, right in the middle of the trilogy, is so good in how the ending completely took you by surprise. Honestly, a lot of stuff took me by surprise in this book, and I love everything about it. And I think the quest that the main character has to go on with Merlin, the political maneuvering that him and Arthur have to traverse through with trying to bring peace and fighting the Saxons and squashing internal fighting amongst the Briton kingdoms. And the utter betrayal by someone that Arthur loved dearly. It's just so good. It's just up there. It's right up there with it. And I love this series, and I love Enemy of God. It deserves number 4 spot because it's that epic. It's like George R.R. Martin's A Storm of Swords times 10,000. It's so well done. Bernard Cornwell, Enemy of God, number 4. Go check it out if you haven't. Moving on. Okay, folks, so I'm driving home. We're getting down to the last 3. Top 3 books that I've read this year. And I think without a doubt, no hesitation, number 3 is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. That is the 2nd book in the Red Rising saga. Golden Sun for me was pivotal because that first book, Red Rising, was great. It was absolutely great. It was a new adventure in science fiction. There's something about Golden Sun. The stakes get raised, Darrow has to face so much more opposition. In Golden Sun, the second book, you finally get off Mars and you start exploring the solar system in Pierce Brown's incredible dystopian science fiction setting. The pain and the loss and how that man takes and takes and takes from the reader. I loved every minute of that book. All the new characters that were introduced, all the different things that happened, the betrayals, the losses, the friendships, the love. Just, I don't know how to describe it. Golden Sun is a perfect book in my humble opinion. I could say so many things about Red Rising, and even I am caught up on all of the current Red Rising novels, and it was hard to pick. This was such a hard thing to pick. Golden Sun is the book in the Red Rising saga that means the most to me, and it's the one that I cherish the most. It's the one that I think about the most. I still think about the ending of that book. I think about the hard conversations had. I think about everything almost as if it was yesterday. And I think it was Golden Sun that made me a Red Rising fan. Without going on and on and on and on about how I love that book, it's number 3, hands down. Number two has to be Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy. This was one of the books that I considered for being in the top spot. Prince of Tides is the most tragically beautiful book I think I've ever read. It's about a family in South Carolina on the coast, the things that they go through within the family and from without. Just tragically heartbreaking story. One of the most beautiful books ever written. The prose that Pat Conroy tells that story with is so beautiful and so raw. It deals with so many complex issues that I can't say because, well, YouTube. Just an absolutely stirring novel. I think about so many moments in that book to this day, and I think that it portrays so much beauty and humanity, but also so much darkness and so much evil. But the ending was so sweet and so tender and so real. After all the things that family went through, it's a miracle any of them made it out alive. And I love that book. I will always cherish that book. I think it's a book that it deserves more credit, and it also deserves all the praise that it will ever get, because it's critically acclaimed for a reason. And I think everybody needs to take some time to read Pat Conroy's The Prince of Tides. You won't regret it. It's so beautiful. But I think before we get into number 1, we need to get into the honorable mentions. Okay, so the honorable mentions. Man, there's so many honorable mentions. Every single Dark Tower book is an honorable mention, specifically The Wastelands, Wizard and Glass, and Song of Susanna. If you're a fan of fantasy, and you want fantasy done in the most unique way possible, Stephen King achieved that. And nothing, I mean, no one will ever achieve anything like that again. A few other books that deserve mentioning are all the Greenbone Saga books by Fonda Lee, specifically Jade War. Jade War was so freaking good. I love Jade War so much. Jade War and Jade Legacy are kind of at the same level for me. There's so much death and so much violence and so much heartache going on. And Jade War doesn't skimp on any of that. But I think we need to get into the last and final book, everybody. Number 1, what could number 1 possibly be? Number 1 book that I've read this year. Can you guess it? Can you guess it? I have made a video of it. If you're a longtime viewer and you've been a subscriber for a while, I want you to pause the video and guess. Drop a comment down below. What do you think the best book, in my opinion, what do you think my favorite book of the year has been? I have made a video about it, and it's one of my all-time favorite videos that I've ever made, and I'm very, very proud of that video. And yes, it is. It's a heavy book. I'll give you 3 seconds. Okay, you're right. If you said Stephen King's The Stand, you were correct. The Stand is the greatest book I have ever read to date. And it is my all-time favorite book that I've read this year. There's no comparison to it. There's nothing that holds the same amount of weight for me. There's nothing that holds the same emotions. There's nothing that even comes close to my enjoyment of this book. I did film a video, I think it was back in September, where I did a 24-hour challenge and I read this book in 24 hours. I love this book so much with all my heart, and though I read that book insanely fast, I still remember everything about it. and I still look back on those characters, reminisce on those characters and the things that they went through, and how Stephen King built that whole story up. And just, he did it so flawlessly, so utterly flawlessly. It's perfect from beginning to end. There's no valleys, there's no lulls, there's no fluff. Again, Stephen King, I don't know how he can write a 1,000+ page book and there not be any fluff in it. I think he could write a 1,000-page book about grass growing and I would be enchanted. And to some people, I know that's what The Stand is somewhere. Like, oh, it was too long here, or dragged here, or it's too fluffy here. To me, I was enraptured the entire time. It's one of my few 6-star reads. I think even in the vlog I gave it 5 stars. Now thinking about it, it's a 6-star book. It deserves all the critical acclaim that it gets, because it's beautiful, and it's one of Stephen King's many magnum opuses. I know that you can only have one, but for an author as prolific as Mr. King is, and the amount of genres that he's encroached in and embraced and written about, I think The Stand stands out as one of his greatest works, one of the greatest books he's ever written. There's just nothing that compares. There's nothing that compares. I mean, The Dark Tower for me as a whole is the only thing that can compare, and it took 7 novels and a novella to do what this one book did. So for that reason, and for many, many others that I cannot express, The Stand is my favorite book of this year. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this little list. I've been thinking about this for nigh on a month now, trying to, the end of the year was approaching, and I thought, what are the best reads? What are those books that stand out among the crowd for this year, for 2023? But I hope you enjoyed. I would love to hear your thoughts on this list. I would love to hear any opinions you have. Just let me know what your top 10 reads are, or even what your favorite book. You don't even have to give me a list. What is your favorite read or reads of this year? 2023, I know for BookTube has been amazing. I just see so many people on this side of YouTube growing, and it's amazing to see creators big and small just bringing more awareness to so many great books. If you're not a subscriber, I urge you to subscribe. We have a lot of fun over here. There's fun vlogs, there's fun challenges that I do that sometimes make me want to just freaking I urge you to subscribe if you like this video. Check out the rest of the content on the channel, and I will catch all of you in the next one.